a one-world race. That's why you'll find outside of the United Nations what they call a statue of the bronzeless, faceless brown man. He's faceless, he's a bronze color, and he's a one-world man. So now, anything they decide to do, they can get by doing. Let me give you what is a hypothetical but not so hypothetical illustration. Suppose they decide to pass a law that kind after kind in regards to marriage can no longer take place. In other words, if you want your little white daughter to marry, she's going to have to marry a mulatto, a black, or a Mexican, or a Chinaman, or whatever. You say, well, that can never be. Well, what would stop it? What would stop it? How could you stop it if they had one world government and they've convinced the world, he deceives the minds of the people, that this is the best for everybody, we all become one people. That's what they got in mind. Let's go back to Matthew chapter 24. We read this last week, and I'll try to bring this together. As we go to Matthew 24, verse 32, let me tell you that I said in the last message that back in the year 2001, I was saying that come September 18th, 2001, that the world would never be the same. Well, September 11th, 2001, the world's never been the same. And I've always pointed out, well, we had a 7-day miss there, so to speak, but the doors on the ark closed 7 days before time. But a man this week pointed out to me something I didn't know. He said, something did happen September 18th, 2001. He said, we were listening to you on the radio back in Oregon, and he said, we wanted to know what was going to happen on September 18th, and he said, my friend called me up on that day and said, guess what they did today? September 18th, according to what that preacher was talking about. Well, here's what they did September 18th, 2001. The world leaders assembled, I guess it was at the United Nations or someplace, but on that date, they declared war on terrorism. And then it came to me, yes, we did hit it right on the date. Now, who do they consider a terrorist? God, and you would consider him a terrorist as well if you knew that he was coming for you, to bind you and throw you into flames, and they intend to fight back. And there has been a war on terror, but they have been fighting against him, and this building of the Tower of Babel they were fighting against the God of heaven when they were building it. And today, as they build this one world order, they're fighting against the God of this Bible. Does that seem clear to you? And now I want you to know what was going on according to Matthew 24, verse 32, when all this was happening. We read, now learn the parable from the fig tree, wherein its branches has already become tender, puts forth its leaves. You know that summer is near. And so you too, when you see all these things, recognize that he is near, right at the door. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. I pointed out last week that that word generation means race. They are out to destroy the Adamic race. And the Adamic race, as it comes through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, is very nearly extinct. If it goes on as it's going on right now, in just but a couple of decades, it's over with. So it's another sign of how close he is. Now we go back to that scripture. Let's go on down to verse 37 of Matthew 24, because this is what it says in Matthew 24, verse 37. For the coming of the Son of Man will be just like the days of Noah. For as in those days which were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, they were marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark. Well, what does this mean, they were marrying and giving in marriage? I'll tell you what it means. It means that they were doing what God says don't do. Sparrows and robins know not to do it. Jackrabbits and bunny rabbits know not to do it. Whitetails and mule deer know not to do it. Buffalo and cattle know not to do it. Don't you dare mate when it's not kind after kind. Now, in the book of Genesis, chapter 6, it says in regards to, well, let's rapidly read, starting with verse 2. There was a marrying going on that was not proper in the eyes of God before the flood of Noah. It says, we read verse 2, that the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves, whomever they chose. Then the Lord said, my spirit shall not strive with man forever, because he also is flesh. Nevertheless, his days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart. And the Lord said, I will blot out man, whom I have created from the face of the land, from man to animal to creeping things, and to the birds of the sky, for I am sorry that I've made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. These are the records of the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his time. Noah walked with God. Now, when you check out what the Scripture is saying in regards to the fact, I think the King James says he was perfect in his generations, what it was talking about is that his lineage had not mixed. Now, don't you all go getting upset, because some of you are saying, well, you know, most of you don't know if your lineage is mixed or not mixed. According to the Septuagint translation, with the day of the Lord that's coming, the Lord is going to cleanse the blood. But they've got us so mesmerized now that it's some big brag that we've got this mix going on. Now, we don't have kind after kind. We call it mixed marriages. You didn't see that a few decades ago in this country. Now you see it all over. In fact, the outcome of that, you see it in, and it's nothing pretty as far as I'm concerned. If you take a look at some of the offspring, we show it here on the screen. Does that look pretty to you? No. I'm going to tell you something. If I found one of my grandkids bringing one of those home for a mate, they're going to be disowned. I mean, this is the result of not having kind after kind. I'm going to tell you something. They're ugly. I'm going to tell you something else. You start watching the news and seeing how many that commit these crimes aren't mixed. Well, they don't talk about it, do they? But it's going on. I want to read a scripture in Hosea chapter 5, verse 7. Because it's happened again. And the only reason I'm bringing it up is it's just another sign that we are at the end. But this is what the Lord happened when the nation of Israel ended there in the book of Hosea. This is what it says in Hosea, coming up on the screen. They have dealt treacherously against the Lord, for they have borne illegitimate children. Now the new moon will devour them with their land. The King James says, instead of illegitimate children, it says that they have begotten strange children. Strange children. Why am I bringing this? Because this is part of the day of the Lord and one of the signs of his coming. The day when you post a watchman, your punishment will come. Two things were going to happen. The punishment would come, and it says in Micah 7, verse 4, then their confusion